Greetings and salutations. Thanks for clicking on the video. Today we're going to take a look at the Unity desktop in Ubuntu and talk about some of the things that you can do to configure it to make it more useful right after you install Ubuntu. This video is aimed at newbies who have made it through the install process but might get a little bit confused when they actually see the Unity desktop for the first time. The Unity desktop was introduced by Ubuntu in 2011. And it has been very controversial. Some people liked it and some people hated it. I tolerated it for a long time, but the more I have used it since I switched entirely to Ubuntu, the more I like it. And it does take a little bit of getting used to. If you were an Easy Linux customer, somebody that I was helping to get started with Linux, once we actually got Linux running on your machine, I would go through a lot of this stuff with you and help you to configure your desktop. And in a way, I guess I am giving away the store. But if you're a noob and you're just starting out and you're getting to watch this video, then it should be a big help. So here we go. Let's start talking about it. Now, what we're going to do to actually get ourselves a freshly installed Ubuntu desktop is I'm going to log in to the guest account on my Ubuntu virtual machine here. And what this will do is it will create an account, and it will be just like it is right after you install Ubuntu and log into your account for the first time. The guest account is really cool because if somebody says, oh, I want to play with your computer, or I want to check my email or something like that, when they log in, the account is created. You can do whatever you want to this account. You can change all the settings, and you can create files, and you can save them, and you can do whatever you want. And then when you log out, it all gets deleted. It just disappears. So that's how this works. So it's a great teaching tool here. You'll see a glitch or two here as the desktop boots up in the virtual machine. In reality, you wouldn't see this. See, lovely, isn't it? That's just the virtual environment. Okay, the first thing we get is a message that lets us know that if we do anything in this account, that it will disappear. And we already know that. When you first boot up Ubuntu for the first time, you usually get something that looks like this. And this tells you all the shortcuts that are in the Unity desktop and all of the different keyboard shortcuts that you can use. In Linux, the super key is the menu key or the command key on a Mac style keyboard. So if you're used to Windows and you have that little Windows key, that's your super key, folks. And that's exactly how I'm getting this to come up. I'm just holding down the super key and it appears. So when you first start up, you're going to see that. You can just open up a program or something and it will go away. All right. So the first thing that we need to do once we get started here is to go and change some system settings. Some of these settings, their default values are a bit annoying, and I'll give you a quick tour here. The first thing that you can look at is appearance, and here is where you can choose a desktop background. You can resize the launcher, which is pretty groovy, and you probably will not have any pictures already on the machine, but if you did, you could choose more than these wallpapers by choosing the pictures folder, and it would go to that, and then you could look around in there and find a picture for your background. Well, we'll leave that the way it is for right now. The very important thing here is behavior, because here's where we can change some of the things, some of the behavior of the desktop and how programs work in the desktop. The first thing here would be to auto hide the launcher. So if I turn that on, this goes away, and what it's supposed to do, which it will not do in a virtual machine, gang, is that when I drag my mouse over, that this disappears. So what we'll do is it'll bring it back. So I think what I'll do here is, just for the sake of argument, is let's go ahead and open up the same thing on the host machine, and we'll auto hide the launcher, and now you'll see how it really works. See? You have to kind of hold it there for a second, and then it reappears. And you can change different things about that auto hide. You can change where you put the mouse. You can put it up here in the corner to do that, to get it to appear, or you can put it to the left side and all that stuff. So anyway, moving on, down here we can enable multiple workspaces, which will allow us to have 4 virtual desktops. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. I'm going to leave that on here as well. This is an important setting right here because it determines where the menus appear. So for instance, let me open up the terminal application here so we have a menu, and you'll see it appears up here in the menu bar, but it only appears when I hover my mouse there. And if that kind of freaks you out, you can change it to where now the menu appears above the application, which is the way that I usually like to run it. So that will get you your desktop configured and ready to go. So we'll get out of that. The next thing we need to worry about is the search and security. And the main thing to look at here is this little guy right here. What this does is the dash, which is what this is called, where you search for programs and songs and everything. If you put a search in here, by default, it's going to go out on the internet and it's going to return search results. And that kind of doesn't work very well, and you get goofy search results. So the first thing that I usually do is just turn it off. It's something that Ubuntu added to the system a few years ago, and kind of wish they'd take it out. But you can just turn it off. The rest of this is pretty self-explanatory. Your mouse, your keyboard, your display, all that kind of stuff. The next thing to look at, though, would be making sure you're seeing, your screen locker here. The screen will go blank after 5 minutes by default, and you can configure that to lock the screen, so you have to put a password in when you come back to it, or you can have it just come back. And I always do, when I set up suspend, which is over here in Power Manager, then I'll have the system, when it wakes back up, to ask for a password. Or you can turn that off as well. If you're the only person that ever uses the computer, typing your own password in might get a little boring after a while. If you were running a laptop, which this is not on, of course, you would see more controls here. What the computer does when you close the lid. You would see what it does when the battery's low, what different behaviors for when it's running on the battery or if it's running on AC. So if you have a laptop, you can just play around with that. And then also here you would see a brightness control, which is not here because this is this virtual machine makes the system think that it's a desktop. So all of the other setup things here are pretty self-explanatory. If you have want to set up a printer right off the bat, if you have an HP or a Brother printer, you can just plug it in. If it's something else, you may need to double check and see whether it works with Linux. A lot of printers do these days, but if your printer is like 5-6 years old and it's not an HP, chances are it probably won't work. A lot of old Dells, they're just bricks. You can't get the drivers for those printers in Ubuntu. And they're cheap these days anyway, so if you're going to be upgrading to Ubuntu, you might as well treat yourself and buy yourself a new HP or Brother printer. That's the way I look at it. This is an interesting thing to take a look at. Details here. This is where you can set preferred applications. Firefox is your main browser right out of the box. And basically it's these different kinds of files and things, what they open. And this will also tell you some stuff about your computer here. So it's something to look at. One of the first things you want to open is the software sources and updates. And you want to make sure that all of these repositories are highlighted, and on other software as well. Make sure Canonical Partners and Independent. Do this before you try and install drivers, which you do over here. The machine can go look for additional drivers. It's going to do that now, and it'll probably come up with the virtual drivers for the VirtualBox machine. However, since we're running in the guest account, it's not going to let me change any of this. But you have to enable those first before you go looking for your drivers, gang. If you don't, then you have a problem. Here's where you configure updates and how often the machine updates itself. This is usually fine to be left alone. Once you have all of these set, that's the next thing that you want to do with your computer. before you do anything else is to go ahead and install updates, because before you start adding software, taking things away from the machine, you want it to be updated. To do that, you should either have the software updater already popped up here, or you can go get it and just do a search for soft, and you'll see software updater. I don't think this is even going to run since I'm in the guest account. Well, no, it'll run. I'm just not going to be able to install any software. So here, this will go out and check for all of the updates and make sure that your Ubuntu installation is updated. And you want to go ahead and do that before you do anything else. Just go ahead and walk away. This takes a little bit of time depending on your internet connection, and it really is a good idea to do this. Also, do this before you install your video drivers and things like that. Just put up with the crappy, the way it looks until you get all of your updates installed. And I don't think this machine, well, this virtual machine will be asking for updates. So when it gets there, I'll show you what that looks like. Here we go. And you can have a list, and of course if you're a newbie, none of this will mean anything to you. Just trust me and update the machine. So I'm going to go ahead and close that. Now let's talk a little bit about the launcher over here and some of these icons that you see. We get to move these around. We can take these off. The first one that I always remove is this little guy right here. The company that distributes Ubuntu, Canonical, gets a little kickback for putting this on here, because this is a web app that takes you directly to Amazon.com, and it kind of detects where you are, so it takes you to your local version of Amazon, and you don't need that because you can do it through a browser, but Canonical gets a little money out of it, so we're going to make that go away. It's your settings. They're also available over here, so whether you leave those in the launcher over here is entirely up to you. And the Software Center, this allows you to browse software for your Ubuntu machine and install new software. We'll go ahead and let that load up so we can take a look at that and make sure that your machine's up to date and that all of your repos are connected before you start installing software. Then we have several components here, actually 3 components of the LibreOffice suite. We've got the Writer, we've got Calc, which is like Excel, and we have got the Impress program, which is sort of like PowerPoint presentations. And they're about 98% compatible with Microsoft Office. You need to install the Microsoft fonts to make it 100% compatible. So if you have a lot of documents that were created with the Microsoft Word, Microsoft Office, and you want those to render exactly right, you need to install those fonts, and that is out of the scope of this video, but that's how it works. Now what I do is, instead of having all of those individual components up there, I do a search for LibreOffice, and you see this one that's blank. What I'll do is put this in here, like so, okay? And then these guys I can just make go away. Now to make something come off of the launcher, you can right click it and unpin from launcher, or you can just drag it to the trash can, whichever's fastest for you. I'm a right clicker type person. Now if you have a hard drive or a floppy drive in your machine and it comes up over here, if you unpin that from the launcher, that's hard to get back, because what you do is you blacklist it. So for instance, this hard drive right here that's showing up on my host machine, if I would unpin that from the launcher, then what would happen is that icon would disappear and I wouldn't see it anymore. There is a way to get it back, but it's kind of a pain. So be careful with that. If you don't want to see it and you don't need it, it's always, your drives are always available here in files anyway. So see, they're always under devices. So it's up to you either way. But if you trash it and you want it back, there's a way to do it. You just have to look it up. All right, what else do we got here? To add, of course, I've already done this once. If you want to add, let's say, Geary Mail here, and you want that to show up, there it is. Geary is my mail handler of choice. The default is Thunderbird. There are several available for Linux, so you can choose your own. And that's basically the entire desktop folks, this is how this works. It is not that hard. It's pretty straight up. There are some tools that you can use, that you can go get, that will actually give you more control over the desktop. Because if you'll notice here, let's open up settings, we really don't have a lot of options for customization. There's only 3 themes that we can choose. We got ambience, which is the standard, radiance, and high contrast. So if you want to get in and hack this stuff, you'll need to go get you some tools. And one of the tools that you can look for, matter of fact, we'll just look it up here in the Software Center. Let this load up and we can actually look at the tools. The first one that you might be interested in, I always install this by default, even though I don't usually play with it very often, is the Unity Tweak tool. As soon as this thing settles in, there's the Unity Tweak tool. So we're going to get more info about that, and that'll give us a screenshot and all that happiness. And the Unity Tweak tool allows you to really get in and change different settings with the Unity desktop. If you want to take it one step further, you can get the GNOME Tweak tool, which will actually tweak more settings. But the GNOME Tweak tool is a bit dangerous. Unity's a bit dangerous as well. You could trash your desktop doing that. So proceed with caution. And if you really want to get funky and make the thing do all kinds of stuff, then you can go get the Compiz Tweak tool. But for me, the default works good enough, and I really don't care. So there's some couple of things about the Unity desktop that I wanted to show you. And I'm going to do this on the host machine because it's easier to show. So let's open up a couple of pieces of software here. I got me a terminal. Let's see, what else can I open? Just something silly here. Go ahead and open up LibreOffice. So we have that open. So I'll open up the writer. And we'll make this smaller. Okay. So, and let's open up files. Once you open up files, by the way, if you want another one open, you can right-click and then you can open a new window, or you can go directly to whatever folder in your home folder that you want to. So if I wanted to open up pictures, there you go. So that's how you have more than one open. Alright, so we've got a bunch of windows open here, and I wanted to show you that if you drag it up to the top and hold it, then it will maximize. If you grab it again and drag it down, there you go. If you drag it over to the side and hold it, it'll fill up half the screen. Drag it away to do that, and it goes back to the normal size. This is called sticky edges, and in one of those tweak tools I was mentioning, you can turn it off if you don't like it. I know some people don't like it, but it's on by default in Ubuntu. So what if we have a bunch of the same piece of software open? So I'm going to go ahead and open a bunch of these files here. And just like that, got a bunch of stuff open. And then we're going to minimize them. You'll see that it comes up here and we have 3 little ticks that lets us know we have more than one open. If we want to look at them, click on it and hold it. And we go into an expo mode here, and it shows us all the windows, and then we can choose whichever one we want. So that's kind of an interesting thing. To switch between windows, alternate tab gives you this lovely menu right here. And if you hold it down, if like an application has more than one window to it, it will show both. So we'll go back to VirtualBox, and now it is showing me both the start screen for VirtualBox, the control screen, and the virtual machine that I have running at the moment. And you can scroll through them using alternate tab. If you hit alternate tilde, it switches back and forth between windows that have multiple windows in them. So now I can choose which one of these I want, and it brings it to the front. Okay. Of course, clicking on an application brings it into focus, but a center click will put it in the background. So if I center click on this, it goes all the way to the back. Same here. Same here. Center click would either be pushing two buttons at the same time, the right and left click at exactly the same time, or if you have a mouse with a scroll wheel, if you push the wheel down without turning it, that's your center click. Some mice have groovy center clicks on it. So there's some pretty cool things about the Unity desktop there. And very quickly here, I'm going to show you how to use multiple workspaces. But I'm going to do that in the virtual machine and not in the real machine, because multiple workspaces while VirtualBox is running will crash the entire desktop. Found that out by accident one day. So we have multiple workspaces open here. So how this works, let's open up files here, and we'll go ahead and open up a terminal. By the way, I'm using the keyboard shortcut for the terminal, which is alternate control and T, just to get me a couple of things. And I'll also open up a Firefox browser here. And that's going to take a little second or two to load in this virtual environment. And there it is. Because that's the first time that Firefox has been fired up, because this account didn't exist before I logged into it. So we have three things open, and yes, we can alternate tab back and forth, and we can do all that stuff, but that's going to get old after a while. I just switched over to the desktop itself. So what we can do is, let me go ahead and put this back on here. What we can do is open ourselves up another desktop, and I can drag the terminal and I can put it here, and I can drag that and put it there. And also alternate control and the arrow keys will switch between desktops. So if I'm here and I'm full screen and I suddenly want to jump over to the terminal, let's give this terminal something to do. I don't know, just show me what the machine's doing. Okay, so if I do this, I can switch back and forth. So I'm using the arrow keys to jump around. If I want to take an application and drag it over to another desktop, I don't have to use the mouse, I can use the keys. So I'm going to do alternate control and shift, and then I'm going to do the arrow keys, and I'm going to put this here. So we are now on number 4. So that's a pretty cool tool. I forget it's there even when I have it turned on. So I don't use it a whole lot. Most of the time I only have one application open, but on occasion it becomes quite useful. And one of the things that I like about the Ubuntu settings is the fact that they're so simple that you can just switch them on and off. Other desktops, Windows, I don't know about Mac because I haven't used a lot of Macs, but other desktops I find to be a little bit too complicated to make switching back and forth like that, especially like the latest Cinnamon desktop that they've just come out in Mint 17.2. You really can't do that. It's just a bit complicated. It's one of the things I actually like about Unity, and I personally keep it simple. So anyway, that is a quick introduction to the Unity desktop. I know I haven't covered everything because it does take a little while to get used to, but once you get used to the workflow of the Unity desktop and you learn some of the keyboard shortcuts, it becomes so much easier to use. So for instance, if I'm sitting here working and I want a program real quick, let's say that I want disks, which is a program that you use to analyze and create new disks and format things like USB sticks and stuff like that. If you want that program, just type in disks, hit enter, it comes up. There's no fumbling around, no scrolling through menus, no nothing. It just appears. There's another thing that this does, and I'm going to show you real quick, and then that's going to be the last one. So I'm going to put it here, and we have our menu appearing above the terminal. Did I turn that? No, it's up here. I like to move it down there, but I didn't for this video. But if you just hit the alternate key, you'll notice, and of course it came on the host too, you'll notice that this little thing pops up here. So on the terminal, if I type in edit, it gives me everything in the menus with edit in it. So if you're running something like well, this would actually be a better example. I'm going to open up the Office program real quick, and this will take a second to load. It's in a virtual environment, and you'll notice that we have a lot of menus to go through here. Well, with this heads up menu, or it's called HUD, is what they call it, heads up display, hit the alternate key, and you'll see that now if I want to go to format, like format a page, change the focus there, format comes right up and I can just choose it. Or a better example would be print. If I need the print menu, there you go, bam, right there. And I don't have to come up here and open this up and scroll. So there's a lot of nifty features in there to get used to with the Unity desktop environment. And that should be enough to get you started. So we're going to go ahead and shut down our virtual machine here as we say goodbye. Thanks for watching the video, gang. I certainly do appreciate it, and I hope it did help, especially if you're new to Ubuntu and just learning about the Unity desktop environment. Don't forget that if you'd like me to help you get started with Ubuntu, check me out at easylinux.com, and you'll see how all of that works, and I will step you through the entire process and get you set up and get you going. So thanks for watching the vid. We'll talk again soon.